Now, let's go under the hood with the Nordstrom's Motor Medics.
Welcome to the Under the Hood Show. We are glad to have you with us. Russ Evans is here to answer your automotive questions.
Thanks for joining us under the hood.
Shannon Nordstrom is here to do the same.
Welcome, hoodies. Thanks for tuning in so we can help you tune up.
I'm Chris Carter here to answer your calls at 866-594-4150. We've got calls on the line. I want to get to some of the calls, but I just want to say, starting out, I'm just happy that this week we are past the weather and we will not have any more weather issues for the entire winter until next winter. We are completely done with it and nothing could go wrong.
Here comes tornado season.
And Gary Anderson hasn't missed a field goal all year. Vikings fans, that one hits hard.
That one is still after 25 years.
Oh boy, let's keep moving. I knew you'd hit that would hit you hard.
Shannon,
yeah.
It's 25 years since that.
1998.
Too soon.
I was there. I was there.
I'm wrecked. 866-594-4150. Let's go to Wyoming right away and talk to Jess. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Jess, what can we do for you?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Fantastic.
Good.
Hey, I got a 2013 F150 5.0. Got a misfire on number 2 and number 8. I have done a resistive compression test. Found it was number 2 was 6%, number 8 was down 16. So I took it to a garage and had them do a relative compression. And number 2 is 6%. Number 8 is 7%. They said they did a bore scope and found the engine had ingested dirt and debris. I wonder, is it worth taking the valve cover off to make sure I don't have a cam follower or a spring, valve spring, or would a cam phaser cause that?
Well, a cam phaser would cause a problem on everything on that side, and 2 cam phasers would cause it on both sides. But if you've got it just on a couple of them, I definitely say it's worth, before you ever condemn any engine, it's always worth doing a little more diagnosis. I definitely pull the rockers off and take a peek at them, see what they look like.
How much diagnosis?
Well,
if a new what's a new engine going to cost?
In this one, a good used engine's probably going to cost him $9,000.
Okay, then never mind.
And new more than that. So
the 5 liters are a little less than the 3.5s, but I know they're going up too. But
installed, price. So, but you always want to look. I mean, you don't want to spend $2,000 diagnosing it, but if they told you there was dirt in there and it did that, just pull the rockers off and crank it over and see if they all move.
I want to back up a little bit here. 2% difference between cylinders wouldn't be enough to cause a problem.
I think he's saying those 2 were really low. They only had 6% and 8% contribution. Is that correct? And the other ones were good?
Yeah, the other ones were good. Number 2.
I misunderstood what he was talking about. Explain what he's talking about, Russ, for our listeners.
So an engine, let's say all cylinders are at 200 pounds compression. If you did a compression test on it that was relative and you watched a gauge, it would say they're all contributing, let's say 100%.
And he said relative. I heard him say relative.
I did too.
Relative to each other.
Okay.
Let's say they're all at 100%. You got some at 98, some at 99, but altogether the average amount. But if you're doing that test and you find that one cylinder is only contributing 40% compared to the others, you have one cylinder that's dropping. Something's wrong with it. When we're looking at a Dodge, we think, if it's especially on the driver's side, we think there's probably an issue with the cam. We're going to pull those valve covers off and we're going to just look at it. And if we see that rocker's not moving, it's a great place to start. With the Ford, I'm going to do the same thing. I want to make sure we don't have any broken things in there, worn out things in there that are causing this, and then go from there. But if you find that everything looks great, everything's moving like it's supposed to, and you still have low compression, oh boy.
See, I was thinking, without even listening to him, that he had just that little of a difference between the cylinders, which would be nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's not unusual to see some percentage difference between that way, but it's a different way of looking at it than what I typically have done.
Where did the dirt come from? Did they tell you? Was your air cleaner box broken, or did you have a bad filter that got so dirty it bypassed it, or did you have one installed improperly? Do they know?
No, they said there was dirt and debris in the air, the intake, and in the all the
Right.
the plenum that goes to it.
Boy,
But I changed that filter religiously once between oil changes and every oil change.
well, if you've got dirt in there, the other thing it could be is that engine may have a catalytic converter that's starting to plug up a little bit, and it's creating back pressure, and it's coming apart inside, so it's blowing back.
Let me drop back a little bit. Now, this is a different engine than the original. This is a reman.
How long has it been in there?
84. I got about 84,000 on it.
That's plenty. So this wouldn't be a new thing, but definitely if you find that has got an issue on that, I would check the back pressure on that exhaust just to make sure it doesn't have a converter coming apart. And then what happens is it builds up all that pressure. You get, let's say, 4 pounds of pressure against that exhaust, and then when that intake valve or the exhaust valve opens up on the engine, it's enough to push back into the engine a little bit, and you can get debris in there, and then that'll end up in the intake. So something to take a look at.
Yes, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. Let's talk to John. You're on the End of the Hood Show. John, what can we do for you?
Hey, morning, guys. Appreciate you taking the call. I've got a 2012 Toyota Tacoma four-wheel drive, 6-speed manual transmission. And yesterday I went to take a road trip. I backed it out of my driveway, and I could feel the parking brake sticking just a little bit, but nothing I haven't noticed before. And usually when I went from reverse to forward, they would release. But I got out of my driveway, went about 30 feet, and both rear tires locked up completely. And I could not break it free. I put it in four-wheel drive low and try to rock it back and forth, and the brakes would not release at all. So I had to kind of drag it off the side of the road because of where I was, which is not a bad spot if someone came down the hill. And I tried a lot of different things to free the parking brakes up. I finally got the driver's side to loosen up a little bit by rocking back and forth, but the passenger side wouldn't give it all. So I came across a trick where if you push the parking brake down really, really hard, the pedal brake, really, really hard and hold it, that could release your parking brake. And sure enough, when I did that, I heard a real loud snap on the passenger side, mid to rear of the truck. But lo and behold, my tire, loosened up, and I was able to back down the road. Went forward a little bit, and they started to seize up again. I did the same thing with the brake, and I got it into my driveway, and now I sit. So I got a twofold question for you. One is, what's the popping noise? I don't understand the logic in a drum brake system like that. And two, if I take the drum off and I don't see any damaged parts or springs, can I just physically disconnect the cable for the time being so the parking brake never engages again? Or will something still activate the parking brake if I do disconnect the cable? I plan to replace the cable, but it's not an easy job, and I'd have to do it outside, so I need some decent weather to do it.
I think you could do that to test it, but the cables may not have anything to do with what's going on. The issue you may have maybe because you've got a hardware issue. It's starting to freeze up in there, and then the brakes are dragging, creating some friction and some heat, and they're starting to stick when they get hot. And after they cool off, they might be all right, or they could just wedge in there. But I think you're going to find when you take them apart that they're too tight and they're sticking. They're probably corroded inside of there. But a test could be to pull the parking brake cable off and release them and see if it rolls. If it does, then new hardware, shoes, drums, clean it up, good to go. But that noise you're hearing is probably just the brakes releasing in there. There's a lot of stuff moving, a lot of moving parts.
We had a Ford pickup that used to do that, and I think I've told this story on the air before. It was like a 94, 89 or 90 Ford pickup. And when that one would have a problem, we could always go backwards. We could drag that thing around like a dog trying to get rid of worms because the back end was sliding around. but you could put it in reverse and then it would release. And what we found on that particular truck is there was axle seals were out, and the rear end grease was leaching into the brake system, and when it would get cold, everything was just binding up, and that was a result of a leaky axle seal. So you might find you've got something like that in there when you open it up too.
Some corrosion something's just getting in there.
That super thick grease just freezing up and gumming up the works.
John, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Find out how you can participate in the show by visiting underthehoodshow.com.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's go to South Carolina and talk to John. You're on the Under the Hood Show. John, what can we do for you?
Hi, guys. How are you doing?
Good.
Hey, Chris, it's going to be 70 degrees this weekend. Eat your heart out. Anyway,
I'm ready.
I've got a good story and a technical question. Story is similar to the one you had about a week or so ago regarding a theft recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Had a friend that lived in Phoenix. He had a Ford F-150. One morning he came out to drive to work, and it was stolen. He reported it to the police. They told him if they didn't recover it in 48 hours, it was probably going to end up in Mexico. Sure enough, nobody found it. About 2 years after his vehicle was stolen, he got a call from the Border Patrol, and they said, come down and get your truck. We found it. Somebody was trying to cross the border. We checked the serial number, and it's yours. So he walked into this yard, went down there, walked into the yard, where the holding yard, looked around. He says, I don't see my truck. The guy says, yeah, it's over there. He looked at it. It was totally repainted, custom interior, wheels, stereo system, looked brand new. He said, that's not my truck. And he says, yeah, it is. Anyway, he had a stud on the inner fender well. And he says, well, if that's my truck, it's got that stud in there. He lifted up the hood. Sure enough, that stud was there, closed the hood, and says, I'm going to park my car out in front of my house tonight, and hopefully they'll steal it too. Anyway, technical question. 97 Jeep Grand Cherokee, V8, automatic transmission. My second to third shift sometimes is very hesitant to be made. If I do a very light pedal, it'll make the shift. If I shift it into neutral and then shift it back into drive while I'm rolling, at that second, third shift point, it'll make the shift. It's got 147,000 miles on it. Otherwise, the transmission's in good shape. Any ideas?
How do you know the transmission's in good shape?
Everything else shifts, doesn't slip. I've changed the transmission fluid, didn't find any, excessive amount of material other than just the fluid. Seemed to be in good shape.
And the fluid that you took out didn't have a hint of burnt smell or anything to it at all?
Nope, nothing.
Because typically when you have early signs in an old transmission without all the electronics involved, in 97 you're not heavy on electronics, but you got electronics there. It would just, when it can't hold that next gear, it would fall back to the gear before it. So I can't do that. I'm slipping too much pressure. I gotta fall back. And if you're a gentle driver, you could fall back, let it shift, and you wouldn't slip any clutches because you could recognize what was happening, and you probably wouldn't burn up the fluid or anything like that. But for most folks, they're driving and they're going and they're like, this isn't working right, and they keep going and they'll quickly burn up the transmission. But with this one here, Russ, on a 97 Grand Cherokee, what do you think is he going to get into maybe a possibility of just having something in the valve body?
It could be that, but it could also be something going on with like the lip seals in the transmission. If they're getting hard and they're starting to bypass some fluid, then what's going to happen is when it tries to shift into that gear, it's going to just pass by until it fills it up and apply some pressure.
So instead of slipping, it's just bypassing that pressure, and there again, you're not going to burn up the fluid, but it's just not holding into that clutch. It's letting it flow between a couple packs. So
well, yeah, it won't make the shift. It'll just hold in second gear until I let up on the gas, and then it'll shift.
Well, that can also be problems with the throttle position sensor and things. If it doesn't see the correct position, it will do that.
Do you have any sort of diagnostic lights that have came on or anything in the last little bit, or has it all been dark dashboard?
Dark dashboard.
Yeah, because if you don't have anything showing up on there, what they're going to want to do is they're going to want to connect to it and just see what's happening during those shifts and see what commands it's giving and you know what is happening in those shifts, just to look at the data. And in 97, is he going to be able to get a lot of data on that to be able to see much?
Some, but not a lot.
Pretty early, because 95 was the first year of OBD2, and so they're just getting into the systems at that point. But a good transmission shop can even put pressure lines on there and see what's happening and check it out that way. That's what you're probably going to have to do if you're not getting anywhere from other testing that you're doing.
Okay, great. Appreciate it, guys.
John, thanks very much for the call.
Our hunch is it's inside the transmission, though.
That's going to be.
And he's just going to have to baby it or decide to spend some money and rebuild that transmission or replace it.
I would baby it for a long time.
Sounds like the type of person that's probably careful on his vehicles and concerned, and I bet you he could drive that vehicle with that condition carefully for quite some time.
866-594-4150. Let's go to Michigan and talk to Kim. You're on the Under the Hood show. What can we do for you?
Hi. I have a 2013 Kia Soul, and it's been having some troubles here. It's been in the dealership twice, and they can't seem to figure out what's wrong with it. Last time they put I wrote it down, a manifold runner on and a wire on the alternator. What it's doing is, and I can predict when it's going to happen, the throttle gets really, really touchy. Then the tach starts bouncing, and then it accelerates to 3,500, 4,000 RPMs, and I can't stop it. It's really hard to brake. One time I almost went through the back of the garage. And so I have to put it in neutral or park. Neutral first because it's revving so high, and then park, turn it off, let it sit for a minute, something resets, and then it won't do it again for 6 months. The first time I took it to the dealer, it happened 2 weeks in a row, and it's sort of dangerous because I can't brake because it's revving so much. So now they have it again, and they're going to put in a map sensor. So not sure really what's going on.
Oh, boy. Well, that's a manifold air pressure sensor, and if it's revving up that high and you're trying to apply brakes, it could actually set a false code for that because it'd be, you get so much vacuum from your brake and you're losing it when you step on the gas.
Interesting.
So that may not even have anything to do with it. Could have a problem with the throttle body on it. We've seen a few of those on these Kias. In fact, we just replaced a throttle body on one of these 2 weeks ago for a similar problem. It had a high idle. Another thing that can cause a pretty high idle on a Kia like that is just something as simple as a temperature sensor on the engine. If it thinks it's colder than what it is, it'll run a lot higher than it should.
Will it do it like sporadically like that?
Yeah, it can come and go, or if the connector on
fault.
it's bad. But we've seen that manifold runner control that you're talking about is what they're saying, and we've put plenty of those on that have failed. And also there's a wire on the alternator that does have a problem, and if it doesn't see that if it thinks the alternator is not charging when it actually is, or vice versa, it can change your RPM because the computer uses that to adjust. So
the good news for Kim is that so far they're
doing things that
right.
that are common on that car,
Okay.
but it's not. So far, it hasn't fixed what she has.
Right.
The
throttle I had done probably 2 years ago by my regular mechanic, and I thought it was a computer issue, and that's why I took it to the dealer.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you did the throttle issue, did you do the pot in the car, the part you push, or did you do the throttle valve out under the hood that's connected to the intake manifold? I
think it's under the hood.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is unusual because for the type of RPMs that is going to, that's quite high. But
I'm sure the floor mat isn't stuck under there because that's happened before to us on
look for a physical restriction. Just that I hope nobody's bypassed that. That it's holding on there, but that is a challenge, and you don't hear this very often with the acceleration like that, and it should be concerning. And I think that the folks at Kia would be very concerned if it's as described.
And Kim, you're on the right. You have the right frame of mind in that you need to get this handled.
Yes.
And you're going to have to, unfortunately, keep chasing it a little bit until you do. Thanks very much for the call, Kim. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Be sure to visit our website for news, contests, and previous shows at underthehoodshow.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time to get back under the hood with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. If you subscribe to our YouTube channel and join the Hoodie Fan Club at underthehoodshow.com, you could win a hoodie.
Like Gage Morton, congratulations from all of us under the hood and our friends over at Universal Technical Institute, uti.edu. They're the place you're going to go when you want to learn more about auto mechanics. Check them out today. They've got campuses all over the country and all sorts of stuff to learn about.
I was wondering, I was going to go look at their course offerings and see about EVs and ICEs, if there's a different, if you do different paths or how that's transition's going to go in the industry.
Yeah, you can get online and look at their curriculum. There sure is a lot of stuff to learn about, no matter what you choose as a path.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's talk to Renata. You're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Well, I just told the guy everything. I have a 204 Caddy, and it made lots of noise when the fan goes higher. And I had put yesterday a replaced cabin air filter in, but that didn't solve the problem.
And the fan you're talking about, just to make sure for everybody, is the fan inside the car that controls your HVAC for your hot and cold, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
On those Cadillacs, the 04 Cadillac, that is a very powerful fan. And when it is in that high-speed position, it is very loud compared to other cars. Very loud. I had one of those cars, and it was, when I'd turn it up on high, it was, I would say, almost annoying. If I wanted to talk to somebody in the car or had my phone on speaker, it was louder than I wanted. If you turn it down a little bit, you're fine. But sometimes when you're in that auto position and the car, you turn the temperature up, it gets colder out, warmer, and it kicks it up on high, it gets fast. So what I would do is, as soon as I got in the car and the temperature got where I wanted it, I'd leave it in auto, but I would touch that fan speed control and knock it down a couple notches, and that's where it'll stay. It won't change automatically after that unless you push auto again. So you just knock it down a couple buttons to where it's at the speed you like, and I think you'll find it works. But that new auto temp control can really be confusing when you first get one of those cars.
Okay, and then one more question.
Sure.
Would you recommend the high mileage oil because it got about 131,000 on?
On that North Star Cadillac engine, we would definitely recommend that oil. There's so many seals that tend to leak in those cars that using that high mileage oil that has conditioners in it will help slow some of those leaks.
Renata, thanks very much for the call. Good luck.
A little bit back on that auto setting. Because I'm a big proponent of the auto setting.
You've changed minds over the years. One for sure.
The Bronco we just got actually has right on the button, you can push it for 3 different levels of auto in your front presence. So you can have a high, low, as far as how much fan speed you want to have.
Listen. Then it's cool. Not auto. No, it's not cool. It's not cool. It's not auto if there's 3
auto.
settings.
And no, it isn't. In a lot of other vehicles now, you go in and you can set what you want your fan speed to be.
You know what that
on
is?
Auto.
That's just like speed control volume.
You
can decide how much you want it. When you go from 0 to 55, do you want the radio to blare at 55 and be really quiet when you're stopped? Or do you want it to be medium setting when you get to 55 and nothing when you stop? Or do you want it to be low? You're adjusting. That's a great idea.
Yeah. So if you look on about any modern vehicle, you can go into your settings and you can find out that you can put your fan at a low speed on auto, medium or high. And that's a change in the last 10 years on a lot of vehicles, I would say.
I better look
Renata,
at mine.
It's not a
No, it's not an option
Not
on
an
ours.
option.
No, that auto's hard set on there. And we should have made sure with Renata that it wasn't sounding like she had bicycle spokes or
Right.
a squirrel in there or something, because you can get material down into your heater box past that cabin air filter, or if rodents get in there or something is broken on a
A
screen.
moose.
I've had a leaf in there.
Yeah, and it can make some crazy noises that are loud.
Mhm.
And you'd want to make sure it's not if she's still listening, make sure it's not an unusual noise. We should have asked that question probably, but no, those old fans, they'd fire up with a clean cabin air filter and you'd swear you're going to lift off.
866-594-4150. Now let's talk to Matt. You're on the Under the Hood show. Matt, what can we do for you?
My daughter's got a 2018 Kia Sportage, and I put a new battery in it maybe a month and a half ago, and now it's going dead. So I kind of looked up, and I found that they might have had an issue with the alternator diodes going bad. So took it to a shop, told them to put an alternator on it. He tried to figure out what was wrong with it for 4 or 5 days, and then he finally put an alternator on it. He parked it outside, and the battery went dead.
Oh,
So now we're still
it was a good thing it
trying to
happened
figure out
there.
that- Yeah, $800 so far. So now we're still trying to figure out why the battery's going dead. But can car starters drain the battery?
Very
It's a new
rarely.
car starter within 8 months, but okay.
Yeah, very rarely. But what you might look at, this is a Sportage, so it has a rear wiper on it, doesn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, you if you're just picking at straws anyways, trying to figure out what's going on, you might want to pop the cover off that rear hatch, which is pretty simple to do. YouTube, if you don't, if you don't feel comfortable just looking for the screw locations for the fasteners and what snaps off, and unplug the wiper motor back there. Just unplug it, and then see if your battery still goes dead. I can't tell you how many. I can hardly count how many have come through our shop over the years that had a battery going dead. It turned out to be the rear wiper. So what happens is when you shut it off, it auto parks itself. So it does have some power back there even when it's shut off. And if it doesn't come all the way down and release that switch, it's binding because it gets to the bottom and it binds. It just sits there. We've had some of them where I go back there and pull the cover off and the motor's warm. I'm like, yeah, there's your problem.
Which you notice if it's on the front sometime. I mean, because I've had things where it's ice and you go, oh, I got to fix that. But on the back,
See, a
out
lot
of
of them,
sight, out of mind.
a lot of them, they don't even work back there anymore, so people don't turn them on, or they don't know how to turn them on, or they just don't because they don't want to turn them on.
Just don't pay any attention to them, a lot of people.
But if they got bumped at some point and did turn on and didn't move, they might have been left like that. So it could be that. That's one thing we would go after, because alternators, big popular item on those cars to fail, and then the wiper motor.
And if he doesn't break the cover, it's a free test. It's a free check.
It is a free one. If you can do anything yourself at home without paying a shop to do it, it's always free.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Matt. I was hoping it was Matt from the shop, and he was just calling because he...
Because Russ wasn't there.
Hey, Russ, it's me. What did you want me to do with this Kia?
Those guys know a lot. I don't think we don't have that problem.
866-594-4150. Let's talk to Bruce in Minnesota. Bruce, you're on the End of the Hood show. What can we do for you?
Hey guys, I'm helping out a guy. He's got a '99 Subaru Outback Legacy, and the head gaskets blew out on it, and he had it redone. Heads are shaved, and new gaskets, new water pump, belt, everything. Year and a half later, it was running good for about a year and a half, and then started heating up again. And he put a thermostat in it. Well, it still was doing it, but I told him, yeah.
We're just looking at
Almost
each other. Like we can't believe that a cell phone faded out.
Yeah.
Bruce, your cell phone faded out there at the last part.
Thermostat.
Sorry.
Just before thermostat was what we got, and we could imagine the rest, but we'd like to hear it from you.
Okay. Yeah, he bought a kit to get the bubbles out, and it steams to still heat up. It'll go all the way to hot, but not all the way like when the head gasket blew. He said it would go all the way past the H. And he said radiator fluid would go into the overflow, and then once it cooled down, it would suck back in. He said the fans work. The fan would not be running when it's cold, and once it got to a certain temperature, it would kick in. So I don't know if it could be the thermostat again, or maybe the radiator.
Well, it could be.
What's your opinion?
It sounds like you've got a radiator cap that's working properly. If fluid's going out and coming back in when it's cool, that's normal. But that engine, we've got to determine what the actual temperature is, because if that thing's getting up, you said before it'd go way past the H and get hot. Well, if it's not getting up that far, it might not be actually overheating. We'd want to know with one of those little temp guns they use for checking people's temps now. They're pretty cheap. You can buy them $30-$40 sometimes, and they're great for checking heat of all sorts of different sources. But find out what it is. You shouldn't be getting much past when the fans are kicking on and off and everything. You'd be in that 210 range or so. But if you're finding that it's getting up like 230 something, we could have either a problem with the cooling fans, the relays aren't working properly, so it's not kicking the fan on at the right time, right temp, or it could be a thermostat. We've seen some thermostats stick in those cars and overheat them. The one way to find out if you've got a head gasket issue, repeat failure, again, would be with a exhaust gas testing kit. It's going to test for hydrocarbons in there by removing the radiator cap when the engine's cold. You start it up, and then you draw some gases through this with just got a little squeeze bulb on it, and it pulls them through. And if it changes colors, you've definitely got an internal leakage issue.
I want to ask about this because it was part of the time we were talking there. You said something about a bubble kit. Now, I bought a bubble kit for my kids like when they were 5, 6, 7 years old, but what was this kit consisting of?
I believe it was the radiator. You put like a radiator cap, and there's a funnel on top.
Oh yeah. For getting the air out of the system. Yeah, those are great. We vacuum every one of our systems down, which pulls all the air out, puts it under a vacuum, and then we have a hose that sucks the coolant in, so it fills it 100%. But then once that's done, we also put the bubble kit. We put the funnel on the radiator and fill it up so we can run it and get all the.
I just want to make sure our hoodies would know what he was talking about there, because not very often we hear about a bubble kit on the show.
Is that why you asked? Because you wanted to be sure the hoodies knew, or
keeps it from spilling? It's great.
Or you didn't know?
I just want to know what he was talking about for sure.
All right. You sounded.
Did
like
you want to know?
No, it sounded like you were covering there.
I could have been
with a lie.
But did you want to know?
We have one labeled, and the label we have in one says radiator funnel.
It doesn't say bubble kit?
No.
Would you relabel it for us and call it a bubble kit from now on?
I'd be happy to.
Sounds more fun.
It does. I like fun
Jake,
things.
get the bubble kit.
Get the bubble kit. Bubble kit! And then you can yell like it's a panacook. 866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show. Six 594-4150. That's the number to reach us here. We're going to talk to Steve now. Steve, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
Talking to a guy that has a 1987 Jeep Cherokee. It looks in great shape. It came from California, 230,000 miles. It would be something to have for just because. It reminds me of my dad and his old vehicle. But I wonder, a vehicle that age, if things go sour, can you find parts for them?
Yes, you can. That's a very popular vehicle. There's actually a lot of folks that are snapping them things up for making their off-road vehicles out of it. It used to be just Wranglers, but you see a lot of that series. My brain's failing me right now what two-letter code they call that Jeep. But it's the old, I'd call it a square-body Cherokee, 87.
Yeah.
They've still got the solid axles under the front, and if it was a Grand Cherokee Limit or a Cherokee Limited, that was a little heavier duty even, and that was a preferred vehicle. But if you go out on like our partner Cardash Part, you can find a lot of recycled original equipment parts. And as you go into some of the facilities, that if you change your search code to the Southwest or to the West or the South, from where you're saying your zip code is, you can start your search from a different location in the country, and get yourself into a rust-free zone where some of the recyclers you're checking on might have parts that haven't been exposed to the northern rust belt that we have up here. As far as the engine, that 4-liter engine or that they used in there, lots of pieces available for those. The drivetrain's pretty common stuff, but no, there's definitely parts available for those. You probably run into some troubles with interior parts. Some of the miscellaneous things on the inside could get a little tougher because the things that wear with age on all of them.
Yeah.
But that's, no, I've seen lots of those keeping on the road and lots of people playing with them as toys too.
All right. Well, it's something to think about, and my kids and I think we would enjoy that. But I just, when they get that old, I know things start failing, and then you got to find parts.
Well, it all becomes a question about the acquisition price. If you're buying it at a price that makes sense, that you know you're going to spend a few dollars on it.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody's selling it as a collectible, they think it's something that is just super special, and you're paying premium price for it, then you might have a different opinion. But if you're buying it at a fair market value and you got to allow for a little bit extra for the repairs that might have to come, I wouldn't be scared of it at all.
And is it, when you started this show 30 years ago,
that was a premium vehicle.
Was a 35-year-old vehicle still in the mix? Like it is now. I mean, 87 seems like nothing.
No,
an 87.
When you ask that question that way all the time, you're trying to trick us. But no,
I have a 1953.
Yeah, I'm not
Chevy,
trying to trick you at all.
No, you did.
I'm
just
saying that
about buying it.
An 87 Jeep does not seem as old as
a 53 did in 87.
Right.
Right.
No, I'm agreeing with you.
I just.
But this had early fuel injection. It had, an overdrive transmission probably if it's an automatic. It has axles that had been proven that they were going to hold up.
And what I'm saying is, in Bruce's question, there was a time when a 35-year-old vehicle, you had to think, oh, is that going to be something that I can even make run? Whereas now it just does. It seems. I think it might just be the internet has made everything so available.
That 35-year-old vehicle is not. I wouldn't give the same answer for every 35-year-old vehicle.
No, but it certainly is closer to that than it was in 1990 or whatever. Because we've talked about that all the time. You just and in your answer, you were like, go to Car-Part, our partner, car-part.com, and look it up, as opposed to go to the library, look up every phone book from across the nation, call every place, and see if they have that part.
Buy a quarterly Hemmings Motor News.
Right. 866-594-4150. Steve, good luck. Let's talk to Tim. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Tim, what can we do for you?
Yeah, I've got a couple questions for you. First one's on a 2015 Silverado.
Okay.
When I'm starting it, sometimes it squeals. Like, I don't know if it's the belt or what. But then when I shut it off and start it again, it starts fine. It doesn't happen 100% of the time. What do you think?
So it'll squeal as long as it's running, or how long before it stops?
No, just when it's starting. Just when it's starting.
Oh, when you're cranking it, or after it's fired up?
Yeah, just when it's starting to fire. Just when it's kicking and starting.
That's weird. And then you shut it off and you go to crank it again, and it cranks just fine.
Yeah, and like I said, it doesn't do it all the time. It'll do it probably 60% of the time.
I wonder if it's
mostly when it's cold.
Yeah, I'm wondering
mostly when it's cold.
Got something maybe in the starter bendix or something. I'd have to hear it to determine if it's coming from the starter motor area or if it's coming from out of the engine as it fires.
Is it a typical belt sounding noise, or is it more of is that what you think it is?
Yeah, but I don't understand that, because when I shut it off and start it up again, it doesn't do it.
But as soon as the engine fires, it goes away, right?
Right.
Yeah, then it's not a belt if it goes away as soon as it fires. It's got to be in something in the starting mechanism when you're cranking it. We've had a couple starters bad in these at times where they've come in to put transmissions in them and things, and we've heard starters make weird noises. But they were doing it all the time. They'd give you a kind of a when you crank it.
For whatever reason, I don't think that's where he's going with this thing.
I got it.
What do you think, Chris?
Knowing nothing. There's a wear piece in a pulley. And when it sits long enough, the pulley is chirping. And then as soon as it chirps and finishes itself, it chirps its little rust spot away. Then when he shuts it off and starts it again, it's gone. And it's going to be gone for 2 hours.
When it fires, it stops
gone.
making noise.
Yeah, it's when the thing that spins, whatever things spin, it's sitting there long enough for 2 hours or a week in the winter, and it's getting just a little bit of just like when I get up here after 1 hour of the show, when I get off this chair, I go, ugh. But if I go ugh, and I walk around the table, sit back down, and get back up, I'm fine. It's that. There's some little metal part. How's that sound, Tim?
Oh boy.
I don't have any birds under there. I cheat.
Well, and the worst case scenario is that you've got something on a roller lifter or something like that. That's
like the water pump.
I had an avalanche that had a noise. I brought it up to Russ one time, and he goes, "Ooh." He goes, "That chirp is not a belt squeal." He goes, "That's coming from inside your engine." And, and then it would go away after just a little bit, and then it wouldn't do it. But we ended up taking it up to the dealer because it was under warranty yet, and they put a cam and lifters in it because it was starting to come apart.
On the Silverado, Tim, bring it to a mechanic who can hear the noise as it happens.
And it can be cam and lifters on those too as they crank. You
had another
crank, and then it goes away when it fires.
You had another question there, Tim?
Yeah, 04 Envoy. I've had a check engine light come on, probably 3 times this past year. It says antifreeze thermostat.
Yeah.
It never overheats. I watch it constantly. It never overheats or anything. I just shut it off. Never seems to bother or anything.
If it says overheating on the dash, but it's not overheating, then that's a problem. Instrument clusters have issues with that. But if you get a check engine light and you scan the code and it says engine not at regulating temperature, that means that the thermostat is not keeping it hot enough, quick enough. And it's got to not only reach operating temperature, but it has to get there quickly and then maintain it. So, I mean, that's an important thing. That we've talked about our partner at Motorrad before, and when we've had them on the show and we were doing an interview, we talked about how their thermostat gets up to the proper temperature quickly and then holds it, as opposed to some that just kind of slowly get there and then they open too quickly and then you lose your heat and your heater doesn't work as good. You can also get those codes because the engine computer now is really monitoring those systems, looking for the correct temp.
Isn't that one kind of a bugger to get a thermostat in?
It is. It's got that funky thermostat housing on it too.
Yeah, so keep monitoring your temperature and don't let that get away from you. And at some point, you're going to have to plan to open that up and put a thermostat in it. Check the plug-in and the connector, too, while you do that.
Tim, thanks very much for the call. We've got Martha from Oregon who's been waiting on hold, so we don't want to make her wait any longer than necessary. So let's go right to Oregon and talk to Martha. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Martha, what can we do for you?
Oh, cool. Thank you so much for talking to me.
You bet.
I have a 1978 Honda Matic, Honda Civic, the CVCC 1500
Wow.
hatchback, and we are the original owners, my mother and I. She's since passed, but so she's always been in the family, and she has 74,017 original miles, and in the beginning of January 2 years ago, I had her in. She got a new timing belt and water pump and all the fluids replaced and everything, and they put in a rebuilt carburetor, and they had her for about 6 weeks. It turned out they really didn't know how to work with this car, that she has a hand pull, a manual choke.
Sure.
And that even though it's an automatic, you have to put it in first when you're at a stop sign and then kick it up to second. And they didn't know you have to go back down to first to start out. Anyway, the carburetor, they tried redoing the original. Then they put in 3 different rebuilt carburetors, and she just ran horribly. They pretty much said, like somebody else last week said, don't bring it back. So I have a pretty light foot. She like when you went to start, you had to like gun it to get gas in so she'd go. But she smoothed out, so that was okay. And then she has an oil leak that she didn't have before they took her. my primary question is, she hasn't been started since I think like June of last year, and I thought the battery would be dead. The battery's 6 years old this year, and a few days ago I went out, turned the key just to see. I figured it would be dead, and she actually sparked, and so I didn't try to start her because I wonder with all the fuel, the oil, and all the fluids were replaced at that time, beginning 2 years ago. So all the fluids were replaced. So, but my neighbor has one of those battery chargers that you could use. I'm just concerned with having not been started for all this length of time, if there's something special I need to do in order to start her safely.
Well, Martha, this is sounds like a labor of love with this car as long as your family has had it. I can't, in my not great memory, but pretty good, I don't remember anybody ever calling in about a CVCC Honda. I think this might be a first for us. And
yay.
they were a precursor to the movement.
Right.
It started earlier than that, but I mean that car started the movement of the Japanese cars coming into our country. You just remember not long after that, you got into the Civics and the Accords started coming, and then you had your Toyotas out there. It was just really, who knew how infiltrated those cars would get into our market. And that CVCC was a fun little car. When you say Honda Matic, it just kind of makes me smile.
We've seen a few of those over the years in our shop. I haven't seen one in our shop in 15 years, but we saw a few, and we had a problem with carburetors on one of them. And we ended up getting another set of another car and trying to make one set work out of the two. At that time, nobody had any rebuilds or new or anything available. And we were able to get it done, and it ran pretty well. But a couple shops, I remember they brought it to us because a couple shops said, I don't want to work on this. Don't bring it back to me. And the thing, I hear that more than I like these days. I hear people say, well, the shop told me, just don't bring it back to me anymore. And if there's no warranty or anything that's due on the car, well, they have the right to say, I don't want to work on it. It's not you. It's just, I don't want to work on this car because I don't know how, and I can't get parts, and it costs me money when I do it. Here's the thing. Here I am in my 50s, and I'm very familiar with cars going all the way back into the, early 80s. And late 70s. And then I worked on so many of myself that I see old ones. But for the general shop guy who's at a shop that hasn't retired yet, that's say 55 to 60 years old, so he's getting close, their good knowledge range is going to be about 1980. So you're right on the edge. And they may have said, I didn't want to work on them then, I'm not doing it now.
Why would I suddenly start?
But the majority of people don't have a clue. If they opened that car and they said it's got a carburetor, they'd go, where is it and what is it? They wouldn't know what to do, so they can't do it. And when you get 5 or 6 years from now, a lot of those people like me that are retired, there won't be anybody except for some independent shops that have made a living out of working. You're out on the West Coast there, so there's some people out there at those shops that are still working on VW buses and things like that. So they've got some older. You're going to have to find like an independent shop, because I'll bet even the dealership is going to be.
Well, and that would have been a car that even in 1978 would have only been serviced at a few shops, right?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, even contemporarily, it would have been a rare thing to find.
There are some people that would have been better served by having that fixed at tuning wise at a motorcycle shop than a car dealership.
It's a big motorcycle engine, exactly what it is. So it can be worked on by some motorcycle shops as well. But I think what you're going to need to do is look around and see if you can find it. Get online and see if you can either find a Facebook group or an online web group for those cars. And then see if one of those people happens to live in your West Coast area.
There you go.
That can direct you to a shop, because you might be shocked, and there might be one mile from your house that you never knew about that works on a dozen of these things a year, that's really well versed in them. That's how you're going to have to.
Okay, Martha, hold on.
Yeah, Martha, before you go away, we're going to do 2 questions on this one.
Okay.
When you described your problem, you were very, very much saying her.
Mm-hmm.
And so this car definitely has a name, and don't tell us. We're going to try to guess the car's name and the color. Yeah, we're going double down on this one. It's got to be a lady's name. So I think it's Cindy the CVCC, and it is silver.
Okay. You think it's a silver Cindy.
Yep.
I think it's a light blue Gertrude.
Okay, and Russ?
I think it's that metallic orangish bronze color they had on some of the Honda, and it's Lucille.
Okay. Martha?
Oh, no.
Ah!
You're so off. My mother's name was Doris Ann, and her nickname was Dossie. So
Okay.
it's the Dossie car, and she's white with a blue interior.
Oh.
Yeah, we blew that one. We missed by a long
missed
ways.
by a lot, but
May I ask, I don't have a computer, but my neighbor does. So what would I tell her to look up online
If
to
they
find
have,
a good mechanic?
if they have Facebook, look up Facebook groups, and they've just a button there that says groups, and then type in the Honda CVCC 1978, and there's got to be a group. There's a group for everything out there.
Start with less words instead of more. Do Honda CVCC, and then just start looking at the returns and
On the groups.
And the groups, you'll find a group. I bet.
Got to be groups for those out there. So, and if they don't have Facebook, they know somebody that does, because everybody has something.
And as far as getting her started, should I just call AAA and have her jump started, or should I borrow my neighbor's battery charger?
Fully charge it so the battery's completely charged, and then it'll probably take 5-6 hours at the low charge rate, and then once it's fully charged, you should be able to just start it.
Yeah, check the oil to make sure you haven't had fuel leach out of those carburetors into the oil.
That would make it over full.
Exactly,
very
and
full.
that could make it leak too. So just make sure your oil level is, if it's high, it's a good chance that fuel's leaked into there out of the carburetors.
Martha, thank you very much for the call. Good luck with that. 866-594-4150. When she first said Honda Matic, I was thinking of a motorcycle.
Yeah.
So I was thinking of her and her mom at the stoplight on the motorcycle, and her mom's gunning it to make sure it goes.
That's awesome. Dossie.
And Dossie the CVCC. And my brother's girlfriend had one about that era, and she used to let me, she would work the clutch, and I got the shift. I thought that was pretty cool.
One of these sitting on the floor of our local Honda car dealership here. I was in there getting some parts the other day, and I saw someone sitting in the front room.
Huh? I'll have to go check that out.
866-594-4150. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you on the Under the Hood Show.
Car feeling ill? Don't want to spread it to your wallet? Call the Motor Medics now for free advice.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Now let's talk to Aaron. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Aaron, what can we do for you?
Hey guys, I've been listening to you for a long time. First time I called though.
Thank you.
I have a 2001. Yeah, I have a 2001 Chevy Silverado 2500 HD with a 6.0 and a 4L80. And I've done a few things to this truck. It's got about 170,000 miles on it. The transmission's been serviced. I bought it this past winter. It was serviced, flushed. It was needing a service badly, according to my tech, but our roads are absolute slop here. And now my shift indicator in the last couple of days on the dash in the cluster is not moving with the shift lever. It is shifting from park through neutral and all that just fine. Where I'm having some questions is I wonder if my neutral safety switch is maybe causing that. And on top of that, it's not shifting from third into fourth real great when I'm driving down the road. It'll sometimes go up to 3,000 RPMs before it'll shift gears rather than at the 22 to 2,500 mark. I'm wondering if the neutral safety switch can do that too.
Yeah, it can all be from the Prindle switch down there. It bolted to the side, and they use hot glue in the terminal connections in order to keep the moisture out of the unit. But some of the factory GM ones have some pretty poor O-ring seals where the shaft goes through. There's a little piece of plastic, and that's what moves to tell it to change gears in there. And if you've got any moisture intrusion inside of there, it will cause that to read wrong. Chris, do you remember you reading the ads when we're talking about our partner over at Dorman Products, and they say gear position
Yes.
indicators and to prevent moisture intrusion. Yeah, that's what they're talking about.
Okay.
So what happens is moisture gets in, they corrode or they just get wet. It can't read right, and it's a super, super low current. So if you got a high current, like a starter, you can about drown that thing and it'll work. But when you got a very low current where you can almost just touch it and it's going to light a different light, you're not going to get the right light on the dash. But here's another thing that's happening. The engine computer also sees that lever is in a different position. So it can hold you up from going into the gear it needs to go into if it doesn't say it's where it's supposed to be.
Okay.
Usually the switch is separate inside of it for the starting, so even if it says drive, it'll still crank on an older one. Newer ones won't because they're using that to tell the starter relay it's okay to kick in. The engine computer does that. So I bet swapping that out is going to fix that issue for you on this one.
Well, it'd be good if it was, and you want to make sure you do this very soon because if the longer you allow that shifting to slip like that, the better chance you got of burning this thing up, and you definitely don't want that.
Yeah.
Find an auto parts store of your choice and look up their switches and find one from Dorman Products because there's going to be a difference. There's several of them available, but the Dorman Products one is going to have beefed up seals inside to keep the moisture from getting back in. If you're in a place that gets a lot of slop, like you said, on the roads, that'll help you out from having that problem again.
Aaron, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. What I heard was just get the glue gun out and just
No, that's not the case.
Oh, here, more to that. You're right, Chris. Good idea you mentioned that. So to get this switch undone,
See, now
he's going
what do you have to say over
he's
there?
going completely the opposite
because of the hot glue in there, to try to take the wires off, don't pull on them because you'll break them. Don't yank on them. Get a hair dryer or a heat gun and warm them up pretty good. Don't melt them, but warm them up good, and then they'll slip right out. Putting them back in, you may need to do the same thing because there's hot glue to seal those connectors from getting moisture in. They're very concerned about that.
Do you know what I heard? When there's sloppy roads around this area are just terrible. And so for people that are out and about, these townships and counties are having a heck of a time with the roads. So if you can avoid a road right now that's starting to get chewed up and take an alternate route, like when you're coming to Nordstrom's, we'd really appreciate it.
Yeah.
The township roads are horrible.
You got a paved road. Why would you want to do anything else?
We have people coming in with mud dropping off their cars, and it's because the GPS directions are bringing them down the township road, which is destroyed.
Yeah.
And so we really need our people to spread the word to use the paved road. Yes, it's an extra mile for some directions, but boy, it's worth it. These types of problems, the slop and the mud that people are throwing up under their vehicles on this entire region around here right now because of the weather that we've had, they're doing damage to their cars. They're getting mud hanging on wiring harnesses. They're doing some serious damage to cars that will show eventually.
And you can, the winter we've had, you can do that damage anyways without driving on a sloppy road. I mean, the snow and the ice and stuff is causing
brutal on the cars.
I've got on my car right now, the ice and snow got into the trim piece, the front plastic part, and now it's blowing in the wind. I can hear it flapping in the wind.
We've repaired several of them already, but the customers, a lot of them understand, but a lot of them don't. When they say, just fix that. Can you just fix that? I don't care if you have to put a new one on. Sure, but we need to bring it in. It needs to thaw out for an entire day because you've got it packed full of, there's like 6 inches of block ice. Well, it's not free. You can wait outside. It's not killing your car. Just let it thaw out. And once it's thawed, then let's get it in and we'll do it quickly. But if you're in a rush, you got to pay for the rush because it's got to go up on a hoist and sit and sit and sit. And then I can't work on anything else while your car's on the hoist.
Our Western and Southern listeners are like, we don't have this problem.
No,
we
even
might find a scorpion in the car or something, but we're not worrying about dirty frozen ice up underneath our vehicles that just doesn't melt. That's another reason too, is it just has so much sediment in it. It just doesn't melt. You hope it falls off.
And this is we haven't even had to deal with it this much as we have this winter in quite a while. So
worst one in years.
We should stop whining, probably.
Let's talk to Greg. You're on the End of the Hood Show. Greg, what can we do for you?
Good morning. I've got a 2017 Corvette, and I put it away in late October, and I've got a battery charger on it, but I only turn it on about every couple weeks. Should I leave that on constantly, or is that about right?
Which battery charger are you using?
The factory one.
Leave it on all the time.
The plug-in.
That's designed on those cars to be plugged in and left on. It's got a smart technology in it with the circuit boards inside there that will charge it and hold it at a level charge, pulsate it a little bit back and forth. That is the one that Corvette has come with it is the one you should use, and you should just leave it plugged in.
Because it will modulate. It handles it all, and it knows what it's.
Yep.
It's smarter than you are on the when to plug it in.
Exactly.
Smarter than the average bear.
Does that help you out there, Greg?
I plug it in, leave it on.
Yep.
Yes.
Do not. Yeah, because I know my parents have a couple of these cars, and so on some of them they actually have a port just for the plug-in, and in some of them they have a place, but no, they just plug them in and leave them. So,
thanks very much for the call. 866-594-4150. Let's go to Idaho and talk to Robert. Let's get this started. We might have to take a hard break here, Robert, but go ahead.
Why do you say that,
Chris? Let's get this going. Start us off here, Robert.
Okay, I have a 23 Model T. I have a question about zinc additive for the oil. Can I just use STP instead of sending away from the model or from the antique magazine?
I misspoke. We're going to handle this
might be
before
quicker.
the break.
Because I was going to leave and go to the bathroom while Russ and him chatted for a while. This will still happen. We're going to be guessing some things here.
Is it a Model T pickup truck or is it a TT stake bed?
A TT stake bed. I have two questions.
That's my question. So the other guys didn't care, but I wanted to know that. All right, so it's the same truck I have, and I use the zinc additive in every single oil change, and I use the lead additive in every single time I put a drop of fuel in it. It gets more lead additive, even though I'm running high ethanol in mine. I don't send away for zinc additive. I find it at any local auto parts store I've ever gone to has had it there for me. So I use that. I can also use the Justice Brothers heavy duty vehicle, which contains that additive in it. It's good for that. So if you see Justice Brothers on a shelf, that you could use that, the heavy duty vehicle. If you go to any auto parts store, you look for it. It'll say ZDDP, zinc additive, or it might just say vintage or antique vehicle motor oil additive. And if you read it, it should be very descriptive and have that on there.
What oil do you use as the oil, Russ?
On mine, I use 30 weight non-detergent oil because I don't want to use a detergent because it has no oil filter in it. There's no oil filter or pump in that system. So if you use a detergent, you're going to make a mess.
And now we're up against our hard break.
There we go.
We got it all in. Robert, thanks very much for the call. Is there more you want to?
I do, but
we can't.
We got to go now.
Yeah, we got to go. Robert, thanks very much for the call.
Get your planner out right now and schedule your next radio appointment with the Motor Medics.
866-594-4150. If you follow us on Facebook and you join the Hoodie Fan Club at underthehoodshow.com, you could win a hoodie.
Like Rick Johns, congratulations from our friends over at Universal Technical Institute, UTI.edu. Check them out today.
All right, we kept Robert on because we want to delve a little further into this Model T.
It wasn't fair to
me,
Robert or Russ.
Right. They have things
they couldn't talk more. That's just not right. It's like having to say, hey, we're gonna have a play day. Okay, we're done.
Yeah,
just bringing the pets over and you dogs play. Oh, we're done.
Yeah.
So have a play day, Russ.
Robert, go.
Okay, I have a question about the drivetrain.
Okay.
This vehicle's got the regular transmission
and a
3-speed auxiliary and a Ruxel.
So it's got all three.
At 20 miles an hour. Yeah, it's got all three. At 20 miles an hour, you're pretty good, but if you get above that, 25, whatever, sometimes it really moves around a lot.
Yeah, the front end shakes. You got the death wobble on the original F150, or actually the F350. It's a 1-ton. If you don't know out there and you're listening, the TT was a ton truck. TT, ton truck. Okay. Not a pickup. They made a pickup as well, but the ton truck was a TT. That was a stake bed. That was the Coca-Cola truck had the back, the fuel truck that would bring gas to the gasoline stations at the time. Heavy truck, not very big. It's light, like 1,500 pounds or less. It's really light. But that front end, so what I have discovered is when you hit about 20, yeah, it'll shake all over the road and it'll actually break the spokes in the wheels. So do not do that. If you're tempted to go just, well, I can go a little faster and I'll just put up with the shake. No, it will break the spokes right out of the wheels. So air pressure. Air pressure is huge on that. The other thing that's a big issue is the alignment of the front end. Get yourself a tape measure because that's the way they did it back then. And look on the Ford TT, the Ton Truck forums, and see what they suggest for the proper amount of toe in on the front end. Mine was too neutral. It was too straight, like 100% straight when I put it back together. Shook all over the place. And I turned it in like one turn on each side. That was all I needed. More than that, I had the issue. So I turned it in just a little bit, and then I increased my air pressure to where it was supposed to be, and it was fine. It had no problem. But yeah, that death wobble was the same thing that happens in the new car, but back in the old ones, and the wood spokes would just bend, and it would break the hubs right out of them.
Now, let me jump in here. Shannon, I have a question for you. Back when you started the show, did you have any 1890 cars called in?
No, I did not.
See, I rest my
and
case.
I would have punted.
That's 100 years old, Chris.
100 years old.
That's 100 years old.
How long has this one been in your family, Robert?
Oh, I would guess about. My dad put it together. He found the parts and whatnot, and that's in 25 years.
25. Yeah, my dad found mine, and we are the second owners and the fourth owner because we sold it as the second owner, and then I went and found it after years and bought it back.
Oh,
and now hopefully I'm the last owner. Until I'm dead, somebody else can.
Do we have to guess what color it is?
Well, don't tell us, Robert, but we do have to guess what color it is. We know
I'll go first.
Russ's is green, but
I'm going black.
That's what I said too.
Well, it's either black, or if it was a corporate truck, it could have been green, but it's probably black.
Black.
I'm saying green.
Well, it's red with black fenders.
Red with black fenders. All right.
That sounds like.
Does it? Well, wait a second. I didn't ask the question before we answered this. Does it have a factory corporate cab on it, or does it have a wood aftermarket cab on it?
It's a metal cab.
Okay. Because and then the box, your stake bed on the back of the stake bed, does it say Ford TT stamped into the bed, or is it blank?
Well, the original one did, but it was in such bad shape. I just built a wooden box.
Yeah.
Oh, I had one about 12 years ago. If you needed one, but it's gone now. Yeah. So the original, you could tell the difference if it was you. So you could buy one without a bed at all. If you maybe you were going to put an ice truck on the back of it,
cabin chassis.
So right, it was. So when you bought it, you could buy a factory bed, and they had the stamped Ford TT in them. And if you had an aftermarket bed, they were not. And then you could buy them without a cab at all. So it was not even a cabin chassis. It was just a chassis you could drive. I've actually got a picture I think I've shown you of our family just driving it without the
I think
cab
you have shown me that picture.
and only the box. But you could buy a cab for it, like an aftermarket cab, and most of them were made out of wood because that was easy for people to build, and some of them were really nice quality, and I see a few of them around today at the shows.
I liked the thought there of looking up on the web forums info about the 1923 truck, that's where you go for your info now.
You should, I think I brought this up before, but if you haven't done it for a while, you should upload that issue from Motor Market where they did the
I
story
haven't.
on
I
it.
found the link the other day, but I haven't uploaded it. It's amazing that there's still hundreds of these trucks out there on the road that are running, and even more so that are not running. But originally there were hundreds of thousands of these things on the road. So they're still around, but a lot of them got scrapped over the year. I insure it with our partners at BerkeleyOneClassics.com. And I tell you what, they've been a godsend to me because when I first started tearing it down, it was not running.
The info you've received from them outside of them as an insurance company has been crazy.
Exactly. So they hooked me up with some car clubs that were able to help me get some parts with this. And, my local agent was able to do that. And that was great. And then insuring those parts my house insurance, I said, is this thing going to be covered if I have an issue? Cause it's all apart. And it was apart for like 7 years. And they said, nope, it's not covered. And Berkeley One Classics covered all the parts and the truck. And now they cover the truck and some spare parts I have that go with it. in case they ever got stolen or, water damage or something happened in the garage.
Robert, thanks very much for the call. Good luck with your 100-year-old vehicle. I have one more question for you, Shannon.
Why me?
Because I know the answer from him.
All right.
Could you jump in that thing right now and drive down the street? I could not.
I have to think of the things Russ has told me, and if I could recollect that, yes.
So no.
But otherwise, no.
And you got to start it first.
Yep, that's what I mean. I'm trying to remember what you've told me. So
nobody has ever driven. So my truck, when I got it, my dad never drove it. He always wanted me to have the fun. So when we finally got it going, and it wasn't running only but about a year before he died. So he never drove it. And I thought about that and said, it's crazy. He never drove this truck. And then the guy that we had sold it to never had it running. And when he sold it to this other guy down in Louisiana, he never drove it either. They were going to work on it and get it going, but every time he'd start getting it to go and run the engine, and he had a heart attack one time, and then he had a stroke. He's an older guy, and finally he's like, I think it's bad luck. Well, when I got it back, it's like I drove it up on the trailer, and he's like, yeah, I've never driven it. And I said, huh. So nobody's driven this since the late 20s when it was originally parked.
Wow.
And last year when we had it out, I had my wife drive it. I said, you're going to drive the truck. And she's like, what? I drive the truck. And I'm like, sure, just slide over here and drive it. And she's a lot shorter, so it's a lot easier for her to drive it than me. But, it was just like second nature. She drove the truck. The only thing I had to help her with was the spark and the fuel control on the steering column, because she wasn't paying attention to what I was doing there. But the pedals, she says, well, I watch you every time I get in it. I watch you. You got a low and a high on one pedal and a neutral in the middle with the parking brake. And then you got a reverse, step on the reverse, you go backwards, and then a brake. And the brake is in the transmission. It's not in the wheels. No brakes on the wheels.
I remember you telling me all this. I think what we should do is you should probably at some point let my dad drive that, since you're the only one that's driven his tractor other than a couple people. So maybe he needs to be one of the people to drive your Model T.
Yeah, and he's been kind of like a dad to me all these years around here. A lot of people mistake him for that. He's not. So I try to live up to that reputation even after I tell him I'm not. But and we do need to do a YouTube video on that. Some people have asked about doing that.
Sure.
Yep, for sure.
Go for a drive.
866-594-4150. Robert, thanks very much for the call. Let's talk to Doug in Colorado. Doug, you're on the Under the Hood Show. What can we do for you?
I've got a 1999 Chevy pickup, and when I started, it's charging really high, way over 14. If I drive it for a little while, then it goes to just run at the edge of 14. But the next day I started again, and it's charging really high again. You know what that would be caused by?
It can be caused by a few things. Now, that alternator on that truck is controlled by your engine computer. It's got a couple circuits in there, and it'll throw a code sometimes, even if the alternator is disconnected or if it fails internally. The engine computer needs to have an accurate reading of voltage. So if you were to plug a scanner in and read the data and saw that your dash said, let's say 14.4, but your engine computer says 13.5, then we actually need to take a voltmeter and check the battery and find out what is the accurate voltage. And if you find out that the engine computer is exactly the same as what's at that battery terminals, then I'm more apt to believe that you have a failure in the instrument cluster, which is very common on those. So you really don't have a voltage problem, but you've got an instrument cluster problem. If you find out that your battery reads 14.4 volts and your dash reads 14.4 volts, but your computer is reading like 12.5, then the computer is compensating by trying to overcharge, and that could be caused by a poor ground on that engine computer, a poor battery ground under the hood, the small ground that goes to the body and not just the one that goes to the engine. That can do that. Even a failing battery can cause this to happen. Batteries are a huge player in the way vehicle electrical systems work, and not just for starting and operating the vehicle, but the way the computer acts. We've seen some even get poor fuel mileage because they were shorted internally and doing weird things. If you go to the battery shop on YouTube, if you're a YouTube kind of person, our partner Clarios has a whole page dedicated to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, because your battery is like your uninterrupted power supply to your home computer.
Exactly.
It filters out the AC current, and it keeps a steady supply of voltage to all the components. And when that starts to fail, then you can get some of those problems. Russ, what is the max charge a person should see if everything's working properly on a system like that?
About 14.4 is getting up there on an older one like that, but it's typically going to run about 13.8 on these on the older ones like that.
Is that on mine? What is it on mine?
Your Solstice?
No, the Prius.
Well, you've got two batteries, so your standard battery on that Prius runs like 13.6.
Okay.
All the time. It's pretty monitored because it's charging off of your, you got your high voltage battery too, and they've got inverters and all that from the high to low. But your big battery is worth hundreds of volts there.
Sure. Doug, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we want to hear from you.
Prepare to learn something. You're going under the hood.
866-594-4150. That's the number to reach us here at the Under the Hood Show. Let's go to North Dakota and talk to Steven. You're on the Under the Hood Show. Steven, what can we do for you?
Yeah, I got a 70 Nova with a 307 V8, and I've been doing a lot of research on it, but I burned up the points in it, and now it seems like I don't have any power going to my distributor for some reason. Any suggestions I'd do for that?
For sure. So on the older cars, for the people out there who are not familiar with them, they used points instead of an electronic system to fire the coil. And if you would leave the key on, like when we'd listen to the radio, teenagers back in the 70s, they'd leave the radio on. Instead of putting on an accessory, which wouldn't power the engine, they would leave it on the run position. And the coil, if the points were closed, they would burn up. If they were open, they wouldn't. So the problem being is that you could burn those points up and get it to run, poorly or not at all. And you can also burn up the ballast. There's a resistor in there that puts a little resistance in. If you hooked it up direct, you'd burn the things up too. You're going to have to check the resistor wire. And some of them have it depends on who's messed with it in between, but it may have a piece of wire that's providing the resistance between the coil and into the harness that has to be cut out and replaced with a resistor or another resistor wire. Or it may just have a ballast resistor bolted in, which is going to look like a little piece of, it's a concrete block with a coil of wire molded into it that'll be bolted to your firewall. Coil wire, that pink wire comes in one side and then comes out the other, and it'll just be snapped on with a quick connector. So that's what you're looking for. But if you want to avoid this problem in the future, you could remove that resistor and put in an HEI.
I say get rid of that. The points in distributor, unless you're trying to keep the car totally original, which could be too.
And you could just keep your old distributor in the trunk or in a box somewhere so you don't lose it, and put the HEI in there. But a complete and brand new HEI they're pretty cheap now, less than $200 usually for a whole unit ready to drop in with the coil and everything. Just drop it in, set the timing, and connect that wire to it. But first you got to get power to that pink wire going up there, and you're probably going to either have the resistor block is burnt out or the resistor wire, whichever they're using on that one.
That's one thing I noticed. I bought the car from an old guy in Arizona back like 20 years ago, and I noticed it didn't have that resistor in there like the other ones did.
Yeah, so it may have a resistor wire. It actually may be the wire itself. If you go back and back probe a little further back, follow that wire up to where the harness is, it may have a resistance in there. Sometimes they just splice them in, and it's just a piece of wire that provides the resistance in there.
Stephen, thanks very much for the call. Good luck. 866-594-4150.
So we want to talk about one of our new partners, and that partner is ACV Auctions. ACV Auctions is a online dealer auction. You've heard us talk about those on our show many times before about how new car dealers, used car dealers, people with dealer license in general go to these auctions and pick up cars. They buy and sell cars that way. And they're a great way to get a car. If you don't have a dealer's license, there's different requirements in different states for them. But, we know people around here that have them, because sometimes you're required after a certain number of cars. If you're a guy that buys and sells 10 a year, you're going to be getting one. But the thing about ACV is, ACV does a lot of stuff when they're acquiring these cars. They've got some really highly detailed condition reports.
Yeah, they're actually going in and scanning and getting reports, and they've got vehicle condition experts that are out there. They're going right to the vehicles and making the condition reports. And as the dealers, instead of having to travel to an auction or go back and forth or move the car, transportation costs are so expensive to get it to the auction, they're doing it right there, and then putting the car up on the wholesale auction for others to buy. It's a amazing concept, and technology has allowed this to happen, and ACV Auctions is leading the way.
Yeah, and if you do have a dealer's license already, go to acvauctions.com, put hoodie in the referral code. We'd appreciate that, and check them out. I mean, if you don't have a dealer's license, it's not something everybody's going to get. But if you're moving a number of cars every year and you're starting to make a living at it, we would suggest using that site, acvauctions.com.
And we talk about it I think of going to the auction and buying, but you can also be on the other end on that through them too, right?
Yeah, you don't have to travel. You can just get on there. You could sell.
But that's
and
what I
you can buy. So, dealers, when they're looking to buy and sell cars, they need a place they can trust. And if let's say I take my car to just anybody, well, I may not get as many eyeballs looking at the anybody site because they don't run a camera under the car and inspect the undercarriage. They don't use a paint meter to check the paint, and their reputation may not be as good. Or it may be simply that they don't offer any kind of transportation if this person needed transportation. So they're just going to gravitate over to an auction, ACV Auctions, and have some of those things provided.
866-594-4150. And we want to welcome them aboard as partners.
Welcome.
Of the Under the Hood Show.
And we appreciate partners. If you got something you want us to look into and see if we want to tell our hoodies about it, we'd be glad to help.
But only if we trust it.
Yep.
Chevrolet.
That's why I said we had to look into it. I drive one.
E-Ray.
Don't have one.
The C8. What? I think we know what's caught my attention over the.
You're a little bit.
What is it?
What has caught your attention?
Well, speaking of E's, I saw a burning bus the other day on the internet. Another, electrical vehicle fire. And oh boy, do those babies go when it went into the total overload burn down mode, and it was blowing flames like crazy. There was nobody on it, of course. It was fine, but it was one that was charging. Outdoors.
We talked about this on a show recently, but there's been more YouTubers and bloggers and stuff that have been going and monitoring the supercharger Tesla stations now that they're starting to make it available for other people to use them.
Right.
And there's some challenges out there.
For sure.
Because some of the vehicles that are charging using adapters, the plugins aren't in the right place. So they've gotten to charging stations where people have had their vehicle sideways in front of more charging stations. It's the only way they can get the cord connected.
First, they got to move the big diesel truck out of the way before they can.
So this is and the Tesla owners themselves, a number of them, of course, are like, why are you doing this?
Right.
What's going on here? And so that's going to be an interesting thing to monitor as they've done that, because we talked about it on the show. There's a good opportunity there, but it also an opportunity for Tesla, because I think they were able to tap into some funding because of that to help with the grid. But now it's some of the challenges. Just put it that way. I say this with a smile on my face because there are some people that are so far over on this issue that everything's got an EV that they're blinded by any of the realities of what it takes to get it to be out there for everybody in the masses. And there's other people that are so far the other way that say there's no way this EV thing's ever going to work. Mm-hmm. And they need to probably pay attention too, because this EV thing's not going away. There's a lot of money at it, and the manufacturers are highly committed to it. But our blending point is going to be a lot further down the road than either side wants to admit.
I have two family members that have EVs, and they're both Teslas, and one of them is a total EV nut. They don't think that anyone else should drive anything but that because it's the best thing since sliced bread and it's going to save the world. And the other one's like, I miss my gas car. I just want to go home and fire up my old gas truck and make it stink and make noise. And I'm just, I got this car, but it's not my favorite, but it's all right. And the other one, good, got it. Oh, I'm like, oh, boy.
So the debates will be long and hard. They'll continue. The evolution will continue. But it's something that I just don't ignore it. Think it's going away.
Right.
It's going to be a part of our moving world going forward in a big way. It's just going to take longer than most people think. And I do agree that for those that are trying to force feed this right now, you're not helping anything because you're putting things out there that are too soon, and it'll just give people a worse taste in their mouth about it.
Tell the truth about the cars and find ways to make them better.
And then you take a look at right now the swan song for the Challenger, the Demon 170. What are they running it on? E85.
Yeah.
And
what
what is 170? It's the proof of alcohol. So that's what they've named this car.
Oh, sure.
And there's all the rage about this car right now, and it's showing what they could do if they let the fuels be turned on.
That'll do it for this hour of the Under the Hood Show. Thanks for joining us. You can find us at underthehoodshow.com. All right, this is the after show. Welcome to it.
That's because it's after.
It's after the show. So this content you're listening to or watching is just available to podcast subscribers and to YouTube or Facebook viewers. Sometimes we go, hey, you know what? Let's that after show stuff. Let's kill that. Let's just take
moving
that on.
There's a snowstorm. We got to get out of here.
I am glad you brought up something today because I had a thought today.
You've only had one thought today?
One thought. So on my way to the show today, last week, this week on the show, you made a very clear pitch and a very clear message to everyone to please stay off the gravel roads leading to this place.
And don't drive in the left lane.
I think I've
Chris,
covered that.
I got more email from that. That was great. Great. And true.
That one
true.
seems to be a universial.
Yeah,
I'm
pretty easy to get acceptance on that.
Sure.
So I'm kind of curious where you're going with this.
Okay, so you said don't take the gravel road. You said to producer Doug and I, specifically, you made a point to tell us not to take it.
Would you take it?
And I've never taken it.
Good.
I know Doug does sometimes in the summer, and I've never have. I just whatever. It's a mile. It's
beat your car up.
It's fine. Yeah, right.
Right now, I'm looking at a proof of a sign we're making that says "Stop Dangerous Road Conditions."
That's funny.
I love it.
As that's what I'm trying to get this done post haste, and my friend Brett at Pride Neon Signs is Pride Vinyl's trying to get me something whipped up we can put up soon.
So you said to me, "Don't drive the gravel road," and it went in one ear out the other because I don't drive the gravel road. Today, I got to the gravel road. And I thought to myself, oh, Shannon mentioned this last week. And I looked over at the gravel road, which I don't even normally do. I don't even pay any attention to that road. And I looked at it and I was like, oh no.
Yesterday we had somebody get stuck going downhill.
And I thought,
in a car.
Did you leave them there?
They were getting a little bit fussy with my dad when he went down to help him. My wonderful, amazing 79-year-old dad.
Who was helping him for free.
Who was helping him for free, and they were getting fussy about the road and thinking that somebody had told them to go that way, which is absolutely not the case. Everybody here knows we don't go that way.
Right.
And he goes, I could leave right now with my big payloader that has forks on it that I can pick you up and move you with, or you can call a wrecker. It's going to cost you $200.
This is very relevant to what happened to me. So I looked down at it and I thought, oh man, that is in bad shape. About that time, this is funny and it goes to what you're looking at on your phone right now. About that time, I noticed all of the flags and the shiny things and the arrows.
They got put on last night.
And all the things on the signs that say, paved road is this way.
Oh my goodness.
And I thought for the very first time in the last several years, I thought to myself, I want to drive down that road in the Prius.
You would not have made it.
Right now.
Yesterday, we had somebody stuck going downhill.
And I thought.
And we had somebody tip their vehicle over onto its side into the snow ditch because they hit the mud and ruts and got kittywampus, and they ended up in a pickup off to the side, far enough on their side that all the stuff dumped out of the box of their pickup into the ditch, and it flopped back over on its wheels, but they were stuck right there.
So in my
Terrible.
mind,
It's terrible.
I'm thinking, oh, that road's in really bad shape. But Shannon's dad has the vehicle that can get me out. I think I could make it.
Do not even try.
That one's a little low. I'd be real careful with that.
But I listen, I've had the Prius in places that other vehicles can't go. And what I mean is when my son was in the Prius, he was working security, and he had to go do security at a place where they were parking in a field and it was mud, and they actually brought in trucks to get people out of the parking lot, and they were parking before the event, and when they left, they had cars stuck all over, and they were pulling them out with these other vehicles, and Oscar drove in and out in the Prius, no problem.
They did that at Lifelight the last one we had. It rained so much that there were people stuck all over. And you're right, some of the cars like that were driving.
Were you just like, why is this?
Why is
am I
this
still
car
going?
moving?
Yeah.
Some
I
of
think
the
I could do it.
but there were trucks. There were like bigger trucks that got stuck, and some of the ones that put them into 4-wheel drive after they got stuck, and then they really got stuck with all four wheels.
You know what else would have made it? My Beetle. My Volkswagen.
Oh,
that
yeah.
would have gone
They
through
made
no
dune
problem.
buggies out of them
Yeah,
things.
that would have no problem. I could do it.
As
Let's go.
in its stock condition?
Yeah. And I'm saying the Prius right now. Let's go. I could do it.
Do not encourage people. I don't think people understand how much it costs.
Yeah, it's awful.
to get these roads back.
Right.
It costs of gravel, it costs of transportation, the cost of maintainers. We're talking huge expenses to get these roads back into a good condition. So just if you don't need to be on one of those gravel roads right now because your house is on that road, don't drive on them.
And specifically, like in the case you're talking about, the road that you're talking about, the car that got stuck yesterday, it hasn't been maintained. It hasn't been fixed since then. I mean, there's still holes.
It's
in
going to
the
get
road.
worse,
and it's getting worse because
the frost is still in the ground.
This
is just the surface.
It snowed so early up here in the upper Midwest that the ground was warm and the snow insulated it. So the ground, you got 50 degrees down a few feet, and then that's radiating up. So the snow is actually melting from the bottom. So it's softer underneath than it is on that frozen top layer, which is only a couple inches. Our parking lot is starting to sag underneath because there's so much water, and you can just see the mud oozing through the asphalt because it's so wet, and it's just going to continue to get. It's going to take a thaw and then a dry. And if this thaw is followed by flooding rains for a while, it could be a while. And some of these roads, once you take off the 6 to 8 inches of good packed gravel on the top, it's a mud fest underneath.
Right.
And a lot of that's been dug down already through this winter.
If anybody else is listening live right now in the local area, we are having and that's why I want to get this straightened out, not just for our customers that come out here every day to U-Pull-It and to Nordstrom's, but we've got a conference here tomorrow from 9:30 to 12:30, and it's a business and entrepreneurs conference being put on by Tom Stammen, Impact Ministries International, and he's done these in a number of different places. Our own producer here, Doug Mashik. It is Saturday. It's
Tomorrow's
okay. It's
not
okay
Saturday.
that you stuck your head in here.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
one
Saturday.
day. I'm one day ahead on everything.
Saturday morning. I totally missed it too.
Saturday at 12:30. That's why I can get the signs up today. And because a lot of people that don't normally come out here,
Oh.
And
Yeah.
you can't just block the road. The county could, right? I mean,
they've
someone
talked
could.
about it. And
Yeah.
they're concerned about liability with people with medical issues and ambulances, and because originally they were going to put up barricades and just block the road.
Well, they left the bridge out for 8 years by one of my workers.
I know it's
But
all
the
out to figure out.
GPS units, it's a rough.
Yeah, if you come out to Nordstrom's and you are a Google Maps user or a Maps user, on the map there's a little button that says "Help,"
Well, come.
and you can contribute
Right.
information. And I want to buy 100 people to send them notes that say, "There's a paved road by 480th. Would your GPS please give these directions?" They haven't done that yet.
I only
they
use
don't
the-
recognize it as a paved route on 480th.
I only use the triptych from AAA. That's the only I don't use.
Okay, so anyway, this conference on Saturday, it's a faith-based conference. The minister that does it is a prophetic minister also, but there will be, I don't know how many people come usually, but last time we had like 7 or 8 different speakers that each gave a 10 or 15 minute vignette about how their faith impacts their business and how themselves conducts themselves within what they do. Entrepreneurs that are trying to come up with business ideas and others that can help each other give ideas, different things. And so that'll be an event out here, 9:30 to 12:30 in our training room upstairs. We do not have handicap accessible access to that room. I just want to make sure and point that out. But it is going to happen this Saturday out here at Nordstrom's Automotive in the Country.
Okay.
So kind of got off to a little bit of a weird tangent there, and then all of a sudden I'm giving a commercial.
That's all right.
Yeah, but I just did that. So
it's fine. Yeah, I think it's all right.
Should have did it during the show, but I just forgot about it.
Is there anything else we need to cover in the after show? I did read. I've been reading a lot about the EV situation and different viewpoints and such. And here's where I'm at on it. Not that. Let me just solve this whole thing. All right.
Oh yeah.
I'll
all right.
speak and then.
All right.
It'll be fine. Don't jump the gun. If you don't have the infrastructure, don't go do it because you might get
Everything's
hung
fine.
out
It's
to
all
dry.
fine. Everything will be fine.
But it's gonna be fine. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen, like you said, slower than
molasses.
Slower than they're
Molasses.
saying, which it always has. Especially when the government says something, they always say we're gonna do this by then, and then of course it gets kicked down the road a little bit, and it gets and the motor vehicle industry, the automotive industry. We could probably sit here, the four of us could sit here, and within 5 minutes, we could probably list 50 things in the automotive industry where they said, we're going to do this by this time, and it got pushed back.
Years, decades.
Yeah, so I think it's going to, when they get to the 2030 date, they're going to go, we're going to extend, it's going to all get to the point, and you're going to be able to, if you don't want to, I think there's very few people that are listening and alive today that will be forced not to drive an internal combustion engine before they die.
That's true.
I think unless you're 16 and you live a very, very long time, they're not going to completely go away, if ever, in some capacity, and it'll get there, and everybody just
Even if it is like we said with the new Dodge, running on E85, even if you are forced to only fuel your car with E85 or more alcohol as the internal combustion issue, there's people out there that'll say no, it'll never happen, or definitely this and that, but that is a possibility that there could be. You push it long enough with the right people in Washington long enough, there could be a time where they say, and it might even be less. It might be that every car has to run E30 or E50, or you can't drive it.
Or every car has to be a hybrid that has.
So, but for me, with the old cars, let's do it. Let's run. I'll just run more alcohol.
Show contributor Rodney sent a note to me about this car. Charlie here in our office had first kind of tipped me off, and I'd seen some stuff online about it, just hadn't clicked on any of the links yet. This car is well over 1,000 horsepower.
Oh yeah.
And
I watched Jay Leno talking about it.
The Demon 170 can flow 164 gallons per hour at wide open throttle. But you'll never be able to do that because at wide open throttle, the Demon 170 empties its entire 8.5 gallon gas tank in 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. It's like a Bugatti.
So if you're out there running really fast on the interstate, you're empty quick.
That's wide open throttle though. And I remember somebody had a Demon or a Hellcat at a car show, and they had a little sign under the hood that talked about the fuel flow and all that. But
I haven't thought about that in years. I talked to somebody at a racetrack who had a 426 Hemi with a big blower on it and 2 4s, and they said that car they had a fuel cell so big, and it was made so that you go from one end of the quarter mile to the other, and you had just enough time to turn off and come back to the pit, and then you refuel it. Any bigger, you'd have too much. They didn't want the weight, but any smaller, they said it'd run out of gas. I'm like, how do you run out of that many gallons of gas that quick? And they're like, it just goes.
And one more thing that I thought of while you were talking about that, I read a article the other day about hydrogen and how they've been almost given up on hydrogen because it's just not economical. But now they've they've made two inventions / discoveries in the last 3 to 6 months. I think it was this year. And they said, the one thing said, it puts hydrogen back in play.
Oh.
That they've been able to figure out a way that in concept this happened, and they had the concept and then they were able to do it. So now everybody in that industry is like, oh, wait, yeah, okay, maybe we can. So,
I think everything's in play at some point if they just knew what to do with the technology. You know, it's like
seawater. All we need is to figure that out.
Water is the most powerful component on the planet. When you take hydrogen and oxygen there, and I mean, you make heavy water out of the water, it's powerful, but to get it to, self-sustain a reaction is not really feasible right now. But someday somebody will figure it out, and all of a sudden they'll say, yeah, we're just going to pour water in your car, and it's going to go like crazy.
And then with the batteries, they're changing the technologies that they can use to make the batteries, and it's going to create a quagmire of problems with the recyclability.
Yeah,
trying to get this figured out. It's something that we're watching real close.
We got to just launch them at the sun.
As they start,
then the sun will go out.
Tesla, SpaceX, just get the batteries, put them on the SpaceX, and just launch it.
Well,
what could go wrong?
We've burnt the sun out now.
Well, last night on the news there was another planet or something they found. Right? They had a picture from telescope or the Hubble or whatever one they got up there. But I just saw that on the news last night. Was it the Webb? I don't watch that stuff real close, but it was a big national news story. It said, hey, look at this. And they had a big red planet with 2 suns and drifty lines on it. And this was just last night.
Was it Tatooine? Were you just watching a movie? I think
he was watching Mandalorian last night.
This was CBS National News, I think, that came on before our local news. It was at the end of the news.
Well, we just can't see that far.
They showed a picture of it.
There's a lot of stuff out
40,000 light years away.
That's why they call it space, because it's so indicative. It is spacious.
Just 40,000 light years away.
We landed on an asteroid about a few years ago, and we went, okay, and we came back and brought stuff back. We might find that. It might be.
They brought stuff back already. Yeah, we did.
All right, there you go. That is it for the after show, and thanks everybody. And if you take umbrage with anything we say, just ignore it. Just move on.
I realize we may not know exactly what we're talking about,
or
just
especially me.
We're not looking for a fight.
Thanks, everybody.